when you say MCP, you're essentially saying tool calling.
Yeah, in that specific design of how that should be set up for an AI.
Mm-hmm. So it's like tool calling is the actual act of one tool calling another. But then MCP is like the version of that. Like there's an MCP version. There could be another version.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And that's what you mean when you say, well, we don't know if MCP will be what the future is.
Right.
We
don't know if the particular approach to doing tool calling is definitely going to stick, but tool calling will certainly be around.
Got it. That's something being figured out and essentially tested to say, is this the best way of doing this one big thing? Mm-hmm. Because we know this is the future, but at our current state, we don't know if it's the best way to set that up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Any interesting use cases that you think we'll see in the future using these that we can essentially ideate on for our businesses to say, oh, that could be applicable to me if I kind of tweak it this way, or anything like that you see on the horizon from your vantage point? Welcome to AI Cafe Day. If I'm biased, I feel like it's just an amazing day. My name is Ava, and I host one AI Cafe every month. I run thinkwithai.com. that teaches business owners, operators, and their teams how to set up ChatGPT so you can upgrade the responses that you get from it, and it becomes your dream advisor, strategist, and thought partner in your role. I have a free 3-step setup at thinkwithai.com if you're interested. And I'm joined today by Ken Cavanagh. He's an industrial psychologist. He is an AI developer, and he's the co-founder of Agency 42, which helps businesses transform how they work with AI. We're going to be tapping into Ken's expertise here to teach us about the future of the internet, something neither of us are taking lightly when we say. We're not just pretending maybe it will be the future, maybe it won't. Genuinely, this is the future of the internet. It's already being built out and used. And as AI gets better and smarter, it will only become a bigger part of the internet. So we'll be talking about tool calling today. To just be hyper clear here, I mean tool as in tools in a toolbox, and calling as if you're calling someone on the phone. Tool calling is what we'll talk about today. So we will tap Ken here in to help us start to understand what the future of the internet is and why it's this thing called tool calling. Can you explain tool calling to us in a way that we can actually comprehend?
Yeah, definitely. So the simplest way to think about it is just simply giving the LLM access to the internet and your computer. So anything that you can do on your computer or on the internet can theoretically be a tool that the LLM can access. And accessing a tool is as simple as the LLM having some instructions that says, hey, you have this tool, and when you run these inputs in this way, which is the LLM just generating text as it does, the system that the LLM is built into, such as ChatGPT or Claude, knows what to do with those outputs and can return something to the LLM. So like if it's searching the web for what the weather is or how to get flights to Brazil, the LLM will receive something and will be able to tell you what that response was.
Okay. And what's an example of where we've already seen this happening before, where we hear the example and then we're like, oh, that's tool calling?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common in ChatGPT and Claude today that anything that is not simply the LLM spitting something out is when it's accessing other information, whether it's the web, whether it's connecting to Google Drive or any of the other platforms that you guys have discussed, pre-built integrations that are in ChatGPT, even the tools that it has to run analyses, or Claude has artifacts and ChatGPT has Canvas. Those are all tools that the LLM effectively has access to and can read from it or write with it, essentially interact with that tool.
Okay, so let's say that I'm in ChatGPT and I have the option to connect it to my Google Drive. I make that connection. Did I just tool call?
No, you just set up the tool calling.
Perfect. And then what would it mean to now run a tool call?
So once you set it up, what is likely happening on the back end of that system is a new piece of instructions is being added to the LLM's prompt on the back end that says, hey, you now have this tool, and here's how you use it. And then the LLM, when you prompt it to say, you mentioned Gmail or Google Drive?
Google Drive.
So look up my last contract with my last client, and it will then write a search to try and find that for you using the tool per the instructions that just got added to its prompt.
Got it. So the tool call comes in not when I make the initial setup of the tool call. The initial setup is saying, yes, ChatGPT, I give you permission to connect to my Google Drive. The tool call comes from when I now open ChatGPT and I go, hey, I want you to grab this piece of information. And then I click in ChatGPT, there's like a plus sign. I'd click that. I'd click Google Drive. It would open up the documents in my Google Drive. I would click one of them. I would hit enter on ChatGPT in the conversation. That is tool calling.
Yes, that would be tool calling, and you're doing like a setup process to essentially give the LLM the correct context to be able to process whatever query that you inputted to it. So what we have to remember is that LLMs can only output text. That is all that they are capable of doing. So all of the actual calling and activation of these tools and the configuration is all just computer software, like it always has been for years. We are just doing another step of processing where it says when the LLM outputs this specific text, which it will if you give it the instructions for how to output that text, the computer then processes that information in a particular way to be able to execute the tool.
So what would be the difference between tool calling as we're talking about it today and who here is familiar with like Zapier and creating like a zap between two things? Is that tool calling too?
Like, it can be.
Why are we now saying this is tool calling? This feels like something we've been doing.
So LLMs natively have been trained to output a data object called JSON, which is a very popular way of transferring data across the internet.
Okay.
When they are able to output this object, computers can read it and they could process it. So the ability to call tools is essentially LLM's ability to output a certain data structure consistently, and they've been trained over time. I don't know who's been using ChatGPT since the early days, but and if you use the API, it didn't always have this capability. So over time, the AI labs have kind of figured out, okay, this is the way we get LLMs to be able to interact with everything on the internet. We need them to output consistent data structures.
Okay.
And that is all it's doing. It's still text, but it's in a form that the computer can read and interpret and run some program on the back end that may result in an action in an app like Zapier, or may result in the LLM receiving some information that it can then act on or respond to you. So in the context of what you're saying, in a workflow, a stepwise operation, technically, you can set up, and usually this is just like in the request to the LLM when you're building these workflows, yes, I want it to be a tool call, and it will output the data in a certain way because it knows when that is triggered, it needs to output the data in a certain way. In a sort of technical sense, it's not necessarily required if your stepwise process is have an LLM generate some text, take that text, and then paste it somewhere. That doesn't technically need to be a tool call. The tool calling is what allows LLMs to evolve into this thing that you're probably hearing a lot of hype around, which is agents. An agent is just kind of like this concept of giving LLMs a bit more decision-making power and adding multiple steps in their process rather than just input-output. So,
okay.
So yeah, tools would be a little bit a step above a workflow, but you could definitely design a workflow with tools.
Okay. Tell me if I'm right or wrong right now, okay? Let's say I am in like Zapier, for example, which is just like a tool-to-tool connector on the internet. So let's say I want to connect Stripe. Every time someone purchases something from me on Stripe, I want to send an email to them that says, thank you for purchasing this thing. So that's just like a basic like Zapier zap that you would put together. Now, what you're saying with tool calling, we are now adding some form of decision making into the process. So a tool calling version of that would be me saying, okay, I want to set up Stripe and I want an email to go out every time someone purchases this product. And for whatever reason, I want AI to write that email. Now I'm tool calling because I've added like a step in there of saying, don't just copy paste this already written email that I have for you into the like email message and send it. AI, I want you to think about the email that should be sent out, write it, and then send it.
Yes,
now
that
we're
would technically
tool calling?
be tool calling. But
Okay.
this is where it gets interesting because this whole like agency aspect of it. You're when you give an LLM a tool, you're letting it decide when it should execute that tool. In the example of your workflow, you may not want the LLM to just generate and send the email. You may not want it to decide to send. You may actually want to see what the LLM has generated before it's pressed send. So you may design the system to not be a tool call, but maybe an approval process where actually the LLM is using a tool call to write it into a column in Google Sheets, and you're reviewing that before it gets sent out. So the tool calling capability is a little more like we want the LLM to make decisions rather than these workflows where we want the human to make decisions. And not to get too convoluted and tricky here, but a lot of these systems and the tools that you use, and like Claude, for example, has Gmail access. They may just write drafts, or they may there's guardrails that you could build into tools so they don't just do these things. But that is the main thing, that if you're going to give an LLM a tool, it can execute that tool. And so, as the human who has designed that or integrated that, you're still responsible for whatever the LLM decides to do there. And sometimes it's not exactly what you want. So
yeah, we're definitely not there yet, but we can be pretty certain we will be at a short-term future. So humor me here because I'm drowning a little. Let's say that we have an integration, right, where we say, I want, like out of all this data on my business, every Friday, I want to get like an email summary that says what the average conversion rate, how many new customers we got, and how much revenue we made that week. Now I say, well, I want to update this with AI. I don't want just those data points. I want AI to look at all of the data of what happened this week and tell me the interesting things that I should know about it. For example, random example, every third week of the month, you actually have a higher conversion rate. Something's going on there. There's a pattern. There's something for you to look into there. That's when we're upgrading this integrations that we're used to having online into much more of like a tool calling experience where we're not just saying, get me this piece of information, this piece of information, this piece of information, and don't touch it. We're actually saying, go look over here, do your own thing, come back to me and tell me what's interesting.
Yeah, and I think because where maybe it's a little confusing is that LLMs executing tools is no different than a computer executing a program. And so when you're designing a workflow where you're like, I want the process to work like this every time, even if there's a step in there that the LLM is generating something in, it doesn't technically have to be a tool call, because as the programmer, you could just decide when the LLM does this, then I'm going to execute this function. So where tool calling gets interesting is when you get into these workflows that are more collaborative with LLMs and less, everything with LLMs is non-deterministic, meaning that we can't guarantee the outputs every single time. And why we design some of these workflows is that, well, to some extent, we kind of do want things to work in a certain way every time. But then there are things like doing research or brainstorming and like thinking, market research is a good example where like I'm trying to figure out my target customer and I want to learn like more about that customer and what other products they may like and all these different things that you could think about them. And you want an LLM to have a series of tools. Maybe it has access to the web. Maybe it has access to like HubSpot, right? And you could get all this information on people from like HubSpot or Salesforce or something. So you have a collection of tools that the LLM has access to, and now you're just chatting away. And you're like, okay, find me people that like are located in LA and are like ages like 30 to 40 and have kids, because you're trying to sell some like, products for families. And the LLM may find somebody or a few people, and you're like, okay, but now I want you to look them up in HubSpot and find their emails. Oh, and now I want you to like go research some more from this other tool you have and pull in some data that I could use to kind of really personalize a message. And then, okay, now we have all that. Now I have my Gmail tool connected and be like, okay, let's like send like one of those emails out. And so that's like this more collaborative experience where it's like, as long as you have all these tools, the LLM could be more of like a thinking and strategic partner. And it's a type of automation that's like, it is automating a lot of this stuff that you would normally have to go click through buttons on the web and go do for you, but it's not like this strict process that you're running every single time. And a lot of times what I see is like you start with that and then you kind of understand, okay, this is how I want it to work every time, and you could build one of these complete workflows out.
Got it. And so each of those, you mentioned like kind of a super collaborative environment. Each single step of that is one tool call. This is a tool call, getting the emails is a tool call, doing this thing is a tool call. Or you're integrating non-tool calls with tool calls because you're having them grab an email, which wouldn't be a tool call because there's no decision making.
There would be a tool call.
Oh, there is a tool call still.
Yeah, so like for Gmail, for example, like tools are mostly, you could think about them as accessing information and adding, or the technical term is writing to information. So with a Gmail tool, for example, you might be like, look at my emails from today. And it probably has a tool that it could run to search through your Gmail and find things for you. And when it gets access to that tool, as I mentioned, it's going to get some new instructions. And those instructions might say, this search works like this. You could put in keywords and you could put in these types of terms, and like this is how you join things together and search for multiple things, just like Google search works with like quotes and commas, and they mean something in those searches. The LLM could get that same information and know, okay, this is how I use this search tool particularly. So when the user asks me, find my emails from the last week that were from my clients, it could like look up, okay, tag clients, date, last week. And there's a particular way in the search tool that you have to write dates so it, can find it. And that's kind of what it's doing there. So you are not writing the search. The LLM is writing the search. You're just telling it the high level of what you want. And then it's receiving that information from the tool. So a tool call, when it's receiving information, is often multiple steps where the LLM puts in some input, the tool runs, the tool gives some output back to the LLM. The LLM sees that and says, okay, here are my results. And now I could respond to the user. Okay. And it'll be like, oh, here are your last 3 emails from your clients this week. And then you could go ahead and say, okay, I want to respond to this email. And that would be another tool call itself.
Okay. Wow. All right. I'm hanging on by a thread here as a ChatGPT girl. Okay. So let's say we finish this interview. I go home. I'm sitting at my computer and I'm like, I need to take some action from this. Like me not knowing a single coding language, not knowing how to do anything. Like ChatGPT can guide me, but that's as far as I can get with this. What at its like most simple can I go home and set up today?
Yeah. Most of this whole thing, tool calling and MCPs, if you guys have heard of it, have become very popular. And what an MCP is it's a standard really of how LLMs use tools. So now all the LLM and AI providers are integrating these in the same way, which is awesome because that means if ChatGPT and Claude decide they're both going to use MCP as the way that they use tools, when Zapier, who has made an MCP for their platform, goes live, it's not just live for Claude, but it's also live for ChatGPT. And so most people today will be able to go home and connect to Zapier in ChatGPT and Claude, which also has like thousands of other integrations. So that's why I mentioned like HubSpot and like LinkedIn Sales Navigator and all those like big CRM and sales tools. They're available there. And you just essentially have access to all these things. You don't need to do any code or anything. it's pretty much all set up for us today. Like you could just go in and use it. There's a little plus button on each of the apps, I think. You say add integration, and then you could just kind of scroll and search through everything that's available.
What are a few examples of things that would be like simpler to set up where you'd be like, especially as your agency, like you look at businesses and you're like, this is like the lowest hanging fruit. It seriously takes like 25 minutes to set up and now you just automated this thing. Or
yeah, I mean, not even 25 minutes with like the Google stuff. A lot of people are using Google. So Gmail and Google Drive, being able to access your documents, especially if I'm like as a business owner, as a founder, like doing a lot of, I need to see like what our last like contract or proposal was that we sent out to this person. And so I could write a new one for a similar client. So it's like, do I go
How
and
do
find
I
that
do
up
that?
and like go into Google and then like
Okay.
go to Docs and then like find that in the search and then copy paste it into, Claude or ChatGPT? Or can I just like press the plus button, connect Drive and say, find this document for me? And then it finds it and be like, great, now you know what that is. Write me a new one using it as a template. Here are the new inputs.
And what platform did you use to do that? Were you using?
That I did on Claude, but you could do it on
You did that on
ChatGPT.
Claude?
Yes.
So you connected Claude to your Google Drive, and by doing that, you were able to have it give access to your Gmail and then pull up that contract?
Yes.
And then how did it do at pulling up the contract? Did it actually do exactly what you wanted?
Did exactly what I wanted, yeah.
Okay, cool. What are other things like that we can build out?
So another one that I really like using is Notion MCP, which is also available on a click. And if you use Notion, it's great because one of the other caveats that I'll just add about the difference between MCP and tool calling is that MCPs generally are more like a toolbox than a single tool. So when you connect an MCP, you're connecting a series of tools for integrating the AI with an application. So that's really nice because the applications tend to know all the functionality and how it should work properly, and they make really nice MCPs that could really allow you to use a lot of the functionality of those tools. So going back to Notion, for example, I could create new pages. I can assign tasks to my co-founders, create new tasks, change the status, due dates. Like I have a lot of access to Notion and all their functionality just by like prompting Claude now. So that's a really big one that I use a lot.
I like that you're thinking about a new one. Hold that one. Don't lose it because I want to know it.
Sure.
When you're prompting this in Notion, you're saying you're using Claude. So all you did was go on the back end of your Claude account. You said, I accept that you can connect to my Notion. Now you're what? Opening a conversation in Claude and going, add this project to Sam's to-do list?
Yeah, and in Claude, like for each conversation, you do have to activate which MCPs you have on.
Okay.
Because that's like one of the—
That makes sense.
The LLMs can only handle so much information. If you give them 100 different tools at once, they're probably going to struggle a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it's usually better to stick to the ones that you just really need.
Okay.
But yeah, you connect it and then you
all you're
activate
doing.
it, and that's it. And yeah, that's that one. And it's really so easy. It's just clicking a couple buttons, and you have to sign into your account, of course, through the usual way with the pop-up. And it's, if you do Google sign in, it's just a few clicks and you have it connected.
Wow. Okay. And what was the last one? Do you remember it? I interrupted you, but
I just wanted to like reinstate like Zapier, because I think like that's where like people will get a lot of value. There are a lot of MCPs out there, and some are better than others, and you do have to like test them out. And I would definitely like look to ones that are developed by the actual product or platform, because it's just gonna perform better and be easier to set up. But there's just so many in there that you should look through there and see what applications that your business is already using that you could just add as an MCP. They have like all the Google tools, and like even like Google Sheets. That one is like really useful if you want to just like have Claude fill something out or update Google Sheets. But yeah, I think you'll be surprised if you haven't looked at that yet, how many there are there, because the project management tools like Asana, Linear, like all the major ones are up there. It's becoming like kind of like almost like a requirement, I think, for platforms, especially going into the future of where this is all going and how people will work with things. And the incentive is really strong right now for anyone who has a product to enable LLMs to be able to use it, because that's now a buying incentive for people. If this product is AI friendly, I'm gonna buy it. If it's not, I'm not. So everybody's kind of moving in that direction.
Okay, and perfect segue into my next question here. As a business owner, like, what should I be doing right now aside from connecting ChatGPT and Claude to these things, but actually for my customers, for my business, what do I do today? Again, I leave this interview, I go home, I'm sitting at my computer, it's just me. I have no AI technical person with me, no technical background. Like, what am I literally putting into this computer to say, I need to start using tool calling in my company?
Yeah, I mean, that's literally it. You just need to start doing it. You need to figure out like where the edge cases are for you and like how it fits into your process.
How do I figure that out? Do I go to ChatGPT and
you need to kind of look at what tools you have at your company, and a lot of people have a lot of the same tools, and I'd be very surprised if there's nothing there for you, and that'd be almost questioning how you're running your business, because they got Google and all the big ones, and it's kind of going and turning them on and starting to try and do stuff that you do in those tools themselves now manually, but through Claude or through ChatGPT, and seeing which ones work well for you and which ones don't, because they are constantly getting improved, and they are going to allow you, when you find the right rhythm to work with these tools in, to move a lot faster. But everybody's still experimenting. Everyone's still kind of learning, like, how do I do this? And like, how do I make these things work for me? And there's no like good answers. The best thing you can do is get in, like, start doing it now and trying to figure it out, and having that pay off when everything is working a lot smoother.
So if you have your own platform that you've developed, this is something you're looking to do, to say, we need to make sure that we have this MCP ability with these other platforms so that we can add features and have new capabilities that our customers are going to be expecting.
In terms of a new platform, like an AI platform, or just a generic
No, let's say you have a piece of software. You've been running it for like 10 years. You built it, it's yours. And you're saying, okay, I need to implement tool calling. Like, from a customer perspective here, is that something that you're doing? You're going home and saying, okay, I need to implement this MCP connection, and then that way we can do X, Y, and Z feature or whatever makes sense for that product?
As the platform builder, yes, you should definitely be thinking about like, how do MCPs fit into this.
Okay.
A lot of platforms, they're gonna have a back end and an API. So an MCP is just kind of a layer above your API to say, like, this is how LLMs can connect to this more easily. And yeah, if you're a platform builder, like, 100%, you should be thinking that way, because like you said, like, this is becoming part of buying intent. And as we move more and more in that direction, and people more and more realize how valuable this is to having these tools, especially with like the amount of people converting right now to doing all their work with these tools. It's like, if I'm doing 90% of my work in there and I need a new tool for something, my first thing to look for is like, which ones on the market have available like MCPs that I could like try and use.
Got it. Okay.
So it's just, it's becoming a selling point, I think, as a platform owner. You really want to be thinking about it.
Yeah, it seems like something that you can't necessarily be sleeping on totally here. You do need to be adding those abilities if it's relevant to your platform, obviously.
And the other thing there is, like, as you collaborate with these AIs and figure out like what are the right ways to like work with them, you're going to kind of see, okay, this is the process that I want to run every time. I want to give it this input, this context, this prompt, allow it to have these tools, get this output, and then run this prompt, and then run this tool, and then you have your workflow, which we were talking about before. And eventually, you could actually just let that live as a workflow and run. And what's really interesting is that like a lot of tasks that humans are doing now are bottlenecked on time. So like if you're a salesperson, like you could only make so many calls in a day. What is going to change is that when LLMs are doing sales, when it's no longer bottlenecked on time, you're bottlenecked on context and information. So how much information do you have to make effective sales every time? And so while there, in my opinion, will be a lot of work still to do that LLMs will not be doing for humans, there will be a big portion of work that was previously bottlenecked on time no longer be bottlenecked on time. So it's like this small portion of work is going to take up a much bigger, especially when it comes to like sales and marketing and stuff, because there's like not really a cap on like how much distribution or like sales you want to do. So that's going to cause a lot of internet traffic to be LLM internet traffic. Like a big portion of internet traffic will move from human traffic to LLMs. And what that means is that like tools and things that exist on the internet that are friendly to LLMs will get used more because more LLMs are using the internet. And tools that don't have the ability for LLMs to connect to them and use them easily will just get used less because LLMs don't have the ability to use them. And that's just the dynamics of where the traffic will go due to this bottleneck kind of getting relieved.
Okay. So if you have your own platform, you want to start building out those connections. And then if you're not a platform builder, you use other platforms to run your company. You're looking for platforms that are integrating or building those connections for you.
Yes.
And that's like would you say that that would be something to safely assume most platforms will go towards? So it's not necessarily like if they don't have it today, like I'm not going to use this platform, or could it be just saying, you know what, I'll just stick to it for 6 months because I'm sure that they're going to add it in?
It's tricky.
I know you don't run these companies, but just from your vantage point of being able to say, like, this is the direction things are going in, like how heavily can we bet to say I can stay on this one platform? It doesn't have it today, but knowing the landscape, it will most likely go in that direction.
It's really tricky because there's, on the one hand, like MCPs and this sort of thing is taking traction for more so for social reasons than technological reasons. It's just like people have agreed this is a good way to do this. Let's just integrate it everywhere.
Okay.
So it could technically change. Like there could be a better way to do it, and then that could go away. I mean, there's so much changing right now in this space. It's really hard to say for certain anything, but it definitely does seem to have a lot of traction, and people. It does solve a really big problem on the technical side of development that gives a lot of incentive, and also the market incentives now for integrating things. So I don't think it's going to go away, but in terms of like what platforms will integrate it when and if they'll ever integrate it is a tougher question because it really depends on the value of that platform. Like I don't know if I see social media companies creating MCPs, but because MCP is like this open thing and social media companies have APIs, a developer, like I built a LinkedIn MCP so Claude could post on LinkedIn for me.
And when you say MCP, you're essentially saying tool calling.
Yeah, in that specific design of how that should be set up for an AI.
So it's like tool calling is the actual act of one tool calling another. But then MCP is like the version of that. Like there's an MCP version. There could be another version.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And that's what you mean when you say, well, we don't know if MCP will be what the future is.
Right.
We
don't know if the particular approach to doing tool calling is definitely going to stick, but tool calling will certainly be around.
Got it. That's something being figured out and essentially tested to say, is this the best way of doing this one big thing? Because we know this is the future, but at our current state, we don't know if it's the best way to set that up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. I think I'm here. Okay. Any interesting use cases that you think we'll see in the future using these that we can essentially ideate on for our businesses to say, oh, that could be applicable to me if I kind of tweak it this way, or anything like that you see on the horizon from your vantage point?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, if you look at a lot of the stuff we use LLMs for, it is not the interesting stuff in business. But I think that is actually what's interesting is that this stuff is going to allow us to automate all the boring stuff of business that allows us to focus on the interesting stuff. Like some of the things that I work on for clients is like lead generation systems. And one thing I've noticed is like you can't have a good lead generation system unless you actually have a good business strategy behind that. And like automation doesn't just like automatically solve a problem. You actually have to understand the problem that you're solving and have a good solution. And then like basically tell an LLM what that solution is, give it enough information to effectively solve that problem, add some tool calling, and then, you know, you have your AI system that's automating everything. But a lot of that stuff is like really just pretty like boring, mundane stuff that most humans don't want to do, like sending emails all day and like reaching out to a bunch of people on LinkedIn and like summarizing a 30-page PDF. No one really wants to do that stuff. You want to like be like in the room, like thinking through problems and like making decisions and strategizing. And so like that's what's really interesting to me, is because there'll be a lot more room for doing that stuff rather than doing, you know, this boring mundane, I gotta log into Gmail and look up this document, or I gotta go into Asana and mark that task as complete. You know, our favorite part of the workday is knocking off all those tasks from our list, right? So yeah, that's what's interesting to me.
Interesting. I keep hearing this term where people say, think with AI, which obviously I'm biased towards loving that. Think with AI, work with your team. And then there's like this level below that of essentially saying, but your team is also made up of a bunch of these agents and these tool calling that are doing these minor tasks. And essentially what it seems like the future becomes is it's less of saying, oh, my entire business is run on AI, or AI runs my entire lead generation strategy, but much more of saying, when a sales call comes in, we write a personalized follow-up to them before a human can get to it. It's like building out these micro tasks that are just one small part of your employees or your day. And slowly over time, one day you're going to look and be like, oh shit, I have like 15 of these things running. And all I'm doing is really thinking about the business while working with my team being also composed of these like agents, this tool calling.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing that with all the hype that happens that people, you know, that confuses people is like, there's this hype around like AI being able to just like solve all these problems for you, but you're still the person solving the problems. You're just configuring a system that will then solve it again for you, because you have the solution and you no longer have to do it manually. And that's really like what I think the superpower is with AI. It's not really like just give it my problems and find the solution. It's putting solutions in place repeatedly and at scale.
Okay. So my lesson here is look at my workflow, look for the boring stuff, the small things that I'm just doing because I'm not even thinking AI should probably be doing it, and it can absolutely go do that thing. Yeah. Like I am absolutely looking through Gmail to try to find a document, and it's the most annoying thing. So those tiny tasks, essentially retraining your mind to say, this is not a human task. This is for someone else to go and do.
The retraining part is so important, because even as someone here who's like speaking about it and I like use the tools very heavily, I still find myself doing those things. And it's just like habit of like how we've been trained to use computers for years and years and years. And now like that's been flipped on its head and there's a completely new way to use computers, and it's like tricky and like non-obvious all the time. And like, yeah, you kind of have to retrain your brain a little bit to do things in this way.
I completely agree with that. You really do. It's that constant stepping back to be like, do I still need to do this? Do I still need to do this? And sometimes the answer is yes. And other times the answer is like, no, why are you doing that thing? That's absolutely not what you should spend your time doing. When you're looking at running your agency, which is built in AI, which is just like, there's a common phrase of saying like building in AI is like building on sand, because you don't really know anything going on, especially for you building out these automations and things, building out these development tools where it's like, well, MCP works today, but maybe tomorrow everybody changes their mind and does something else. How do you think about going into work every day and saying everything could change tomorrow? How are you like mentally in your mind thinking about this? Like, what are you telling yourself? Like, what's your mantra? Like, what monologue is in your mind saying like, yeah, it could change, but because of X or whatever, I'm in this game. Like, I want to play this game.
Yeah, I guess context is king, and that the the bottleneck switch that I talked about moving from time bottlenecks to context and information bottlenecks. And a lot of business is done through key people that understand aspects of the business and the problem that they're solving and the strategy that they employ that is just in their head, and they could easily tell other people to go do things in a certain way. But with AI systems, they don't always remember everything unless you got memory configured in a certain way. And even then, it's still something that's being experimented with. And like, you have to tell it again. And you kind of want to build up this like layer of information, that what I call the context layer, which is like everything that is in your head as a business owner, or as a founder, executive, whatever you're in. So you could pass that along to an LLM. Because again, the LLM is not going to solve the problem for you, but if you have the solution and the problem, and you have all the information that could possibly be needed to solve that problem repeatedly, it will be able to do it. But a lot of people still have not done the process of taking all that information out, because it's really hard to do. It's like, try to sit there and like write down every key strategic insight about your business. It's really hard, because it usually just kind of comes up intuitively in the time that it needs to, and you just kind of act that way. And so like this process looks more like, I say that it looks like security engineering, and not to get too technical, but how security engineering works isn't typically, I'm going to think of all the ways that this system could be insecure. Usually it's there is some sort of security breach, and then the engineers are like, we didn't see that one, but now it's patched and it's not going to happen anymore. And that's a lot like what it's like working with these systems. If you're building up this context layer and you have like this information layer that the AI can connect to, but then it makes a mistake. I didn't have a particular instruction for that particular problem that we faced in that edge case, so I better go add that to the instructions that I give my AI. And over time, you build out this sort of like, you could call it a super prompt, or the context layers is what I call it, that no matter what changes and how much better these systems get, having that in place will always be better than not having it in place. Because as intelligent as the underlying AI system gets, it still needs context to operate. And so you always have to give it that context. So, when we get the next thing, you're going to already have that.
Okay, so you're just constantly saying, like, yes, the goalpost is going to keep moving. Things are going to keep changing. But as long as AI just has the context it needs, I'm ready to go at that stage. So GPT-5 can come out right now as we're having this interview, and you go, that's great, because it has the context needed in order to be able to apply. Okay. This is exactly what I teach, so this is great. Okay. I think we have time to open some questions up. Sure, you had your hand up quick. I like this. Now I'm like, what's he going to say? What's the question?
Thank you for moderating, and Ken, always fun to hear your thoughts on this topic. Two questions, one on similar lines. So from a more personal use, layman standpoint, or I guess even business-wise, can you talk through what it, in terms of security and access guardrails, right? So I have personal Gmail and I have my work Gmail, for example, right? How would you suggest to go and say, hey, you can look at both. I'm giving you access one click, but I only want to look at XYZ. Don't look at my health records or my bank information only. Does it allow that? Is there a way to set it up?
As far as I know right now, it does not have that capability of like...
So you're pretty much giving open door.
Yeah, at least for Gmail. Like, so for like Notion, for example, and I think you've used some Notion. So you set up different pages. I'll have to fix that. In Notion, you could set up different pages, and with the Notion MCP, they actually allow you. There's a setting to say what pages Claude could have access to, and I think what you're saying is a problem that is going to get addressed. There was just a recent release I saw for like upgrading how MCP works with authentication. So I think it's still like in this earlier phase of the technology where they haven't just gotten yet to doing that things, but it's going to be like really important, right? We don't want to always give all the information to AIs, and like especially in like business environments where you have different levels of information asymmetry and permission between different people, you do need to have something that prevents certain information from getting into the system and not. So
Today, if I connect, it's getting all the
it's gonna get everything. Yeah.
And second question, on this sort of spectrum of where do you say tooling, is there like a place where it stops? For example, you can connect and say, hey, look at my emails and find me my business results for last week and give me some analysis on it. Or do you go like, is IDE now part of tooling to say, I'm integrating steps, or using AI and LLM to start, updating my code? Like, where do you define the spectrum of tooling as we're talking today?
Yeah, so I guess there is like, I would put those things in kind of like different categories. I guess you have like, so like with IDEs and like developer environments, there is also a chat window, and they have tools to work with the files in there and maybe search the web. So it's the same paradigm, just kind of like in a different interface to solve a different problem. So tool calling would just be the LLM's access to anything outside of what it naturally can do, which is just produce text.
So it's been about 2 years since ChatGPT 3.5 came out, and then over the last few months, we've seen a lot of AI LLMs have deep research and thinking/reasoning integrated into all of them. And with the release of Grok 4 Heavy, which is their premium plan, we've seen people using 4 agents in tandem where each agent reviews each other's work. So that being said, how much longer before we have single founder companies where they're running everything on AI and we only have one person running the company? And then beyond that, how much longer before we have agents deciding what to create companies on by themselves?
Yeah, I'll give two kind of, I guess, analogies here. So one is the experiment that Anthropic did with Claude running a vending machine. So Anthropic set up a vending machine that was hooked up to a computer that Claude had access to the ability to literally run the business. So could order new products, could look up new products, could take in requests for products, check the sales, see when things need to get refilled, everything that someone who is running a vending machine would need. And Claude did catastrophically bad, which you would think is like a pretty simple business, just like refill stuff and, refill things more that people like more, like pretty simple to run a vending machine. But it was just awful. It made terrible business decisions. One, for example, so Anthropic employees were allowed to request new things to be in the vending machine. Someone requested a tungsten cube. And if you don't know what a tungsten cube is, you can look it up, but it's a really nerdy, like, rock, basically. And Claude decided to order 500 of these, and they are not cheap. And the company just had a rack of these 500 tungsten cubes because one guy just said they wanted a tungsten cube. And I think the point is that, like, LLMs have still, despite the new models, they still have not proven that they make good strategic decisions in businesses. And humans are still the bottleneck. So if you have 4 agents running, great, you have 4 outputs to review and make sure they're all right. And if you're using like agents to write code, and you have like one of these agents like Devin that just wrote you like 1,000 lines of code, great, you have 1,000 lines of code to review before you like push that to production. So like at the end of the day, as long as humans are still the bottleneck to pressing like accept, and that's good, there's still gonna be a lot of room for LLMs to improve. And I don't think we're very close, despite like the capability and intelligence to do tasks when they're given sufficient information. Well, it's still really hard to give that sufficient information across the many, many things that humans do in their working lives and their businesses. And I think that will be like a bigger challenge, even as intelligence gets to a point where it is really capable at doing this stuff. It's just not really good at doing it without the right information, the right context, and the right processes. And yeah, it's hard to see how humans will be like removed from that. I think there are certain types of businesses now that, you know, if you have a small, simple product and like, you know exactly who your target customer is and you have a really good sales process, you could automate it. And then, you know, people are coming into your product and you're not doing anything. And maybe it's like one or two people. I think that's possible. And people have done it today, right? Before AI. But I think it's less about like, oh, I could automate every single thing in my business, and just like having something that's really simple and clear and just like a really good business strategy that you kind of embed in an AI. And I even think like you could do that with ChatGPT and you could do that with Grok 4. It's not the intelligence, it's the humans that are currently, you know, not there yet.
I think we have time for one more question, and I think I saw someone with a microphone over here. Yeah.
I didn't bring my own microphone, but it was handed to me. And you're like way more intelligent and informed than I could ever hope to be, you know, much to everyone's chagrin. So my question is this: you've talked a lot about sort of end-to-end user and a lot about behind-the-scenes building, and I'm sure most people here are more builders than users. And if they're building, they're probably not building personally. So there's the enterprise value of what they're building. But my question is things like Superhuman, which you're using personally, which had a really good exit. How much of that do you think is going to go away, and where do you think it's going? And when you think about AI and going up to AI or using it locally, where do you think that's going to go? Because the average person, not even in Venice, but well beyond in, you know, Wichita and Boise, is probably just going to consider this like ChatGPT and everything that's out there now is Walmart. And eventually we have to get down to those specialized stores, but they're only going to want to use it. They're not going to want to make it. So where do you think the direction goes in? We've had 3 years of ChatGPT. Let's extend it out another 3 years and 5 years. And what do you think that landscape looks like?
You know, it's really tough to say. I think there's going to be a lot of market dominance from like the big players like Google and Microsoft, and they're going to offer all the tools. But in a lot of ways, that's like they won't be able to specialize as well. And I think because of because so many more people can now build software because of AI, I think there's going to be a lot of options for things on the market. And we're going to see a lot of dynamics shift up. There may be more like new companies and smaller products that are solving problems like in more niche ways. And how social media is evolving, it's kind of like it may become more like a distribution game where like kind of like you're scrolling and you see this random product that you're like, oh, that actually solves a problem that I'm facing right now, and you click that, and so it's like I don't see like the dynamics shifting away from like big company tools much, because like they'll always be the things that like people think of first. But I see the dynamics of like these smaller products that are like solving a really particular problem really well, and like using AI to scale their distribution and getting it in front of the right people, like having more of an advantage now. And you actually seeing all these like, oh, I never heard of this product before that this person is using, because there's so many products out there now that it's more about, can you get it in front of the person that you're actually solving the problem for? And I think like those types of solutions will wind up beating out like the big like Google and Microsoft and whatever, if it's really, really targeted. So it's interesting, and I'm not 100% sure where it goes, and I still think you're going to see the biggest market share by those big players. But yeah, maybe we'll see some more little players.